Are you a picture frame hoarder? I have a secret. Okay, maybe it's not a secret. I have a huge stash of picture frames. So today I had finally decided I'm going to share with you ways to completely make over frames, or maybe add something to a frame that you already love. Ways that you can either get through your stash and get them for resale or whatever you do, or you can even, if maybe you've got something you're bored with hanging on your own wall and you just need a new way to think about it. So we're going to use IOD molds and transfers. We're going to use Debbie's Design Diary Infusion Paint. We're going to use Jami Ray Vintage Cottage colors. We're going to find ways to add greeting cards, canvases, you name it. We're going to do it today. So stick around, make yourself comfortable, get your favorite cold or warm beverage, and I'll see you on the flip side. Who remembers the blue and the ducks from the 80s? We are going to use this vintage home interior print because I absolutely love the round frame. So I will take it apart. I thought I would check and see if I could peel the paper off of that backing, but to be honest, that is printed right on that cardboard. So using this faux canvas, I love this little bird. I think it fits perfectly in this round frame. So we are going to give this a good wash, and then I am going to paint it with the Debbie's Design Diary Jami Ray Vintage Cottage color. And the difference in the traditional clay-based Debbie's Design Diary DIY paints and the Cottage colors is that the Cottage colors has a built-in sealer. So I'm using the color Barn Quilt. I'm going to give it a good stir because that sealer will settle up on the top and all of your pigment will settle down in the bottom. So to get that coverage that you're used to with DIY paints, you really want to make sure to mix it up well. And I think I honestly could have gotten away with one coat on this plastic faux wood looking frame, but I do go ahead and give it 2 coats all over. So I used the cardboard backing to measure my circle, only to then have enough sense to realize I actually need it to fit down inside with the backing over top of it. So now I'm just using the glass to get a circle take 2. But this canvas looking print is actually almost more like a plastic material. But it still gives that beautiful appearance of a hand painted or hand sketched picture. So this is where you can see how good the coverage was on that first coat, but I just wanted to show you that, and here is where I'm giving it that second coat. It just helps give it that extra protection that I want before I distress it. Typically wet distressing the Cottage color is a lot more difficult, and you have to use a sandpaper to really be able to distress it. But because this is on a plastic frame, I really didn't have any trouble doing a wet distress with a wet wipe. To add more dimension, I'm going to use Debbie's Design Diary wax in the color dark. Now this paint, because it has that sealer, it does not need a wax like you would with the clay-based paint. But I wanted to just really be able to bring out that detail. So I'm using this, just which I call disposable brushes. I bought like a box of 1,000 of them at a yard sale. So I just kind of use them, and if I can keep them, I will. Otherwise throw them away. No harm, no foul. But I am just using a dry rag to wipe off that wax from the high places, leaving it down inside all of the detail from the frame. And then I'm going to buff it once it's had a chance to kind of sit and dry. Our next step is putting it back together. So I've cleaned this glass and gotten it all shiny and new. Nice shot of the underneath of my kitchen table chandelier. So I'm just going to put this canvas in here, double checking to make sure it's not upside down or sideways or anything. And then I'm going to put that back on there and put the screws in. That holds it perfectly tight. There wasn't any need to put any additional layer in between there, but I think it turned out absolutely perfect. I love it. This next one couldn't be any easier. I thrifted this beautiful silver frame with kind of a mother of pearl edge around there. And the only thing I am going to do is clean it up. And then I'm going to add this Sierra Club greeting card. I have a pack that are all different flowers. And so after I remove these like 35 pieces of cardboard, all I'm going to do is clean the glass and get the frame all cleaned up. And I'm going to put that back in there. That's, remember that when you're a reseller, sometimes it's really just about selling the frame itself, and frames sell better when they have a picture in there. I am not going to glue or tape. I didn't cut the card. Somebody technically could take it apart and use the greeting card if they wanted to. So I'm just going to stick that in there, and then I will add all those pieces of cardboard back in there to ensure that everything is good and tight. And then it is finished. I mean, easy peasy. Can't get much easier than that. For $2.99, I picked up this pair of wooden frames, and I am going to use this decoupage paper. It's the perfect size to go in there. It's by Decoupage Queen, and I'm not actually going to decoupage it on anything. I'm just going to use the prints like as if they were photos. So I'm going to cut out that sheep and that rooster. And I really want to give it, I'll put the other aside. I really will use it somewhere else. But I love that red in the rooster, so I'm going to go ahead and take off all the little parts on these frames. Make sure you put them in a bag together so you don't lose any of them. So you can see there I'm just putting them in a little plastic bag. But I'm going to paint both of the frames in my Cottage color barn quilt, and I will price them individually. Someone can just buy the sheep if they want, or they can buy the rooster and the sheep, and that red really it brings out that red out of that rooster. But you can see I had stored my paintbrush in a plastic bag. That's one of the nice things when you're working on these. You can just wrap it up really well in some plastic wrap, or you can put it in a sealable plastic bag and you don't have to wash your brush out every time. These Cottage colors do have that sealer in it, so you don't want to leave it forever. I did 2 coats, and I'm going to kind of help antique age them using the Fusion Wax in the color Espresso. So following that same model that I did before, I am going to get a little paintbrush here, and I'm just going to dip that down in and then paint it in those deep little grooves. Again, I just really want to bring out that detail and help give it that aged look. If you don't like that and you want everything to be kind of crisp and new, you can just skip this step. It's just a preference in the way that I like the things to look. And then obviously that's the end of a sock. But I'm just going to wipe away the excess. I will do that to both frames, and after they've had a chance to kind of cure a little bit, then I will come back and I will buff them really well with a dry towel. Using the glass from one of the frames, I just measured out exactly how big to cut out my pieces of decoupage paper there, and then I will put them in the frame. And in order to make sure that the picture really pops and it doesn't get too dull with the cardboard backing, so it has that brown cardboard back, I did put a piece of white paper behind it to really give it a nice bright fresh look. And then I screwed all those little arms and the screws back on there. I touched up that black on the edges there. You can kind of see where that Goodwill sticker was, so I wiped it clean and then touched it up with some paint. But these turned out really well, and it was a very easy flip. I had so much fun with this next thrift flip. This little frame has a porcelain and brass little knob topper there. I picked it up for 50 cents at a thrift store, and it had this fabric decoupaged over the original piece of cardboard. That's not really my style either, so we're going to set that aside while we give this frame and the hook a couple coats of the Fusion all-in-one paint in the color Coal Black. Very similar to the Cottage color. This paint has a sealer, and so once you have given it as many layers to achieve the color that you want, it does not require any kind of top coat. So I'm using this little brush to make sure I can get down in all the details. I'm going to paint the front and the back of the frame and the hook with a couple coats here. So now we're going to break out our IOD Cameo Mould, and using cornstarch I'm going to dust that large Cameo mold there. The cornstarch just helps to make sure that your clay does not stick. So you want to give it a good coat, but then you shake out any extra. You don't need a ton in there, just enough to kind of create a barrier so that your clay, if it's kind of sticky, it doesn't stick. And I am using the IOD Air Dry Clay, and you really want to make sure you wrap this up well so that it stays soft and pliable. That other piece left in the bag is actually a wet paper towel that I put in there to help make sure that it had the moisture and it did not dry out. I am going to work it just a little bit to kind of soften it up. I have a piece that's about twice the size I need. Lessons learned, it would have definitely cut down on the amount of work that I had to do if I had used a smaller piece. But I press it down in the mold there, kind of rubbing my hand on it. Some people will use a rolling pin or a brayer to help smash it down in there, but you can see I'm just kind of pulling off that excess. And the great thing about these IOD molds is they have a patented micro rim that goes around the edge of all of them, and it helps to make sure that you get a crisp edge when you pull off your clay like that. So you can see there just where it's kind of raised around each of them, and it just helps to really make sure that you have a nice clean edge. So I flip it upside down and I just kind of roll it out, and I use my finger to press anywhere where I, user error, did not get it completely clean. So I have this antique vintage book of poems, and I am going to use that in the back of the frame. And then I am going to put this mold right on the glass. So I'm looking to see where does it fit, which poem do I want to use so that you can see the letters that I need, and using the glass as my template so that I know where exactly to cut out that book page. Old books that you can pick up from the Goodwill bins or the thrift stores, if they're a little bit torn up and you aren't saving them for the value of the book itself, then they make really good ephemera and pages that you can add to junk journals or like this in a picture frame. So I have cut out a poem about love, and so I am using my barn quilt. I am painting my cameo. It is still very wet. I've set it on this piece of cardboard, trying to make sure I don't have too much paint on here. I don't want it to pool up in the detail, but red paint is the perfect background when you're going to paint something gold. It helps to really brighten that gold. So that is why I am using red on my cameo. You won't be able to see the red at all. It's just the background behind the gold. And I'm trying to use a very light touch here because my clay is still wet and I don't want to risk that I'm going to smooth out or ruin any of the beautiful detail on this cameo. This is Debbie's Design Diary Liquid Patina in the color Golden Ticket. We're going to paint that right over our dried red paint, and of course because it had that built-in sealer, it works out extra special here. I am being very careful. My clay is still wet, and the reason that we do our paint when it's wet is it helps to reduce the likelihood of cracking as your clay continues. So you can see there, I'm just kind of picking up any place where it's pooling, and then we're going to let that first coat dry. Here it is after just one coat. You can see that it's going to need a second coat, but we're going to let this one dry really well first. I've decided to help tie in that gold cameo to our frame. So we're going to actually take that same liquid patina and just top coats, and this particular one has that gold fleck in it. And so I'm going to paint it down in that detail of this frame, and then take a dry paper towel and just kind of wipe it around. So it's not an all over coverage, just giving it a little bit of that gold hint, but then to antique it even more, we're going to go back with the dark wax and add that in because I don't want it to look all new. I just wanted to have that hint of gold so that it kind of brings out the gold from the cameo. And of course, once I've had that dark wax all in there, I'm just taking a rag and wiping off the excess. All right, now that our golden ticket has dried on our cameo here, I am using the Debi's Design Diary Dark Wax to get down inside all those grooves. So I am just using my little brush here, and I'm kind of treading lightly here in the beginning, but I do completely cover it, get it all over, and then I take a rag and come back, and I'm just going to wipe off all of those high spots, because I really just want that dark to stick down in there so that it gives it that nice aged appearance. So now we're going to put it all together. I'm putting the clean glass in there, holding onto it with a rag so I don't get fingerprints all over it. And I promise you guys, I did go back in and paint that black. I'm not going to sell it all funky looking on the back there, but I'm just adding in my book page, and then I will put the back on there. That book page is a dark enough color, that aged color, that I don't feel the need to add any white paper behind it. It's going to be absolutely perfect just the way it is. Now I am going to glue the cameo on the front. It's actually going right on the glass. So it does mean that this is what it's going to look like if somebody wishes to do something different. If they buy this and they are going for a different look, then they will either have to use it without the glass, or they will have to add a new piece of glass. Do you guys have pets? Do you find that everything you do has cat and dog hair in it? So picking off cat hair before I use my Beacon 3-in-1 glue to glue my mold down to that glass. I love this glue. I don't get anything for telling you how great it is. It's just sharing with you that this is one of my favorite glues. I call it hot glue in a bottle because it doesn't require a hot glue gun, but it does dry very quickly. But it's really easy to use. I'm just making sure that I get the glue all the way to the edges. The clay is actually still a little bit soft inside, even though my paint has dried. It has not completely cured, and it's going to be really nice because I put that glue on there, and it will flatten to that glass. I'm just trying to make sure that I don't drop it down in there and have to move it because I don't want to wipe that glue all over my glass. But sometimes clay will bend a little bit and kind of warp, and this way it is perfect. I love the way this one turned out. I'm putting the porcelain knob back on, and here is how all of our frames from Group 1 turned out.
I looked all afternoon, so much stuff to search through, but I just couldn't find it. So now I'm resigned, fine, it's no longer mine. Maybe someone else will like it. And then it hit me like a pile of bricks. Good things rarely stick. Stuff gets stolen, hearts get broken, bad luck strikes twice.
We're getting ready to start on Group 2 here. I picked up these 2 little gold frames for 99 cents. Unfortunately, where they were taped together like this, it did mean that the tape pulled off the paper cardboard there, but that's okay. We're going to fix that later. No problems with that issue. I am all good. So we'll start by taking out this little piece of paper here, and you can see how yellow that plexiglass is in there. So it's kind of like, we'll have to do something about that. But we are going to use the Jami Ray Vintage Decoupage paper. This is the Valentine. It's either from last year or the year before, and it's vintage Valentine postcards. I'm taking the picture I pulled out of that little frame and kind of seeing which ones are a good size match. And then once I have picked them, I'll go ahead and cut out the ones that I want to use. Once I cut it out, I'm just going to kind of do a little size check. I'm going to poke it in there and see if I need to trim at all on either side. I do end up kind of just giving it a little bit of a trim and making sure that it will fit in there once I'm completely finished and put the back on. So I realized that the black cardboard was actually coming off of the frame, but that turned out really well because I wanted to do something, replace that plexiglass anyway. So I just kind of took my scissors and turned it sideways and popped off that cardboard, and then picked off the glue that was in there. It was almost like it had been a hot glue. It had a bead of glue that just peeled off really easily, but it gave me a great chance to clean that up and pull off that piece of piece of plexiglass. You can see that yellow square. I mean, it was really yellowed. I know plexiglass can kind of just change colors over time, but it may have also been in someone's home that there was something about it that caused it to yellow a little bit more. So prior to getting my new plexiglass, I wanted to age these frames up. So I'm using my Debi's Design Diary dark wax in the same fashion that I've done everywhere else. It has a little bit of a chip on one of the cherub's heads there. So I'm going to use this wax to disguise it, but I'm just going to shove that wax down in all the detail, and then I'm going to come back with a paper towel and wipe off all of the high points, just leaving it down in those little details. So one day while at the Goodwill bins, or the Goodwill outlet as others say, I found a poster picture frame that was broken, but the plexiglass was in great shape. And $1.79 a pound, I figured that plexiglass was going to cost me pennies, and I went ahead and bought it thinking there might be something I need it for in the future. Well, guess what? The future is today. So I traced around that old piece that was in there, and it's a little bit, the plexiglass is a little bit thicker than what came out of there, but I just used my scissors to cut it, and it did this weird thing where it kind of created this frayed edge on this one side, only when I cut this direction. It did not do it when I cut the other direction. But the piece was big enough that when you put it in the frame, you couldn't even see that. And I'm hoping that where the glue is, that it keeps it from continuing to crack. I don't see any reason why it would continue to crack. But it's, again, you know, you can't see it at all. It's far enough down that it's not even going to be noticeable that it did that when she put it in there. So I'm going to use my Beacons 3-in-1 glue again, and I'm just going to put a bead all the way around there, and then I'm going to rub it down a little bit because I don't want it to have any reason to be raised, especially since my plexiglass is just a hair thicker than what came out of there. So I'm just going to smash it down so that it doesn't have a raised piece at all, and it's good and flat. I'm going to do this to both frames. Remember how that tape just like totally ripped the back here? So I'm just using my coal black, my Fusion Coal Black, and I'm going to actually paint all over just to kind of give it a whole new fresh look, and of course hide where it ripped. When I went to glue this back on, I realized how rough and awful it looked around there. So I decided to go ahead and take that same paint and just paint around the edges. That way the entire back would be black and you couldn't see where that gold paint had kind of come around the edges. It just made it look sloppy, and this helps to bring it kind of a little bit more high-end look. Once both the picture frames and the cardboard backs had dried, I went ahead and used my same Beacon 3-in-1 glue, and I glued those cardboard backs to our beautiful cherub frames. So the last step is to put our Valentines in there. So I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to put our little cut Valentine in there, making sure that it is upright. And I wanted to really make sure that that color would pop, because as you can see, the back there, the cardboard was kind of brown, and decoupage paper being a thinner paper, it really needs to have a white background. And so I either could have painted the inside of that cardboard, or I could have painted the back of the decoupage paper. But after initially putting in the original picture upside down so that the dark one is the side that was showing, I do take it apart and do it correctly the second time and put it in there with that white background. And I think these turned out really cute, and I think they're going to sell a lot better now. Our next flip makeover is with this adorable Barnwood frame, and I know that that rooster is really cute. I know that that sells, but I wanted that frame, and so I'm going to actually put something over it. I paid $3.99 at the thrift store, and I lucked out because this board comes out with screws. I can't remember the name of this stuff, but it's like pegboard without the holes. So it's a lot thicker than cardboard. It's just a little thin piece of whatever. I don't know if it's like a whole bunch of pieces of cardboard. But anyway, I don't have to worry about nails or staples or potentially tearing up this board. I was checking to see if this was paper, but it is on there. It is not coming off. And again, that was really cute, and I'm sure it could have sold the way it was, but I wanted to do something different with this frame. So the original seller here wrote $3.99 in red marker right on the frame. And I think that not only does that make it look really ugly, I'm not selling it for $3.99. I'm definitely going to ask more than $3.99. So I've got to get that off of there because that could be really confusing in my booth. So sanded it down. I'm not going to lie, I left the 2025 because I thought it was kind of funny. So it's kind of being a bit of a hypocrite there. But anyway, I'm using the Fusion Furniture Wax in the color Espresso. It blended that right in and you can't even tell that I sanded on it. Okay guys, total art hack. Have you ever found a canvas that was like from Hobby Lobby, whether you found it at the thrift store or not, or maybe even the Dollar General sells canvases that have artwork on them, but you don't want to just hang a canvas on the wall? Then you can actually cut the artwork off of there and save the wood from the canvas, because those little thin pieces of wood come in handy for all kinds of things. Throw those in your stash. But you can frame the artwork so that it gives it an actual... it looks like a more high-end piece and not just like a printed canvas that you bought at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or the Dollar General. So I am using the board that I took out of there. You can see that I actually moved it over. It's not perfectly centered because I wanted to cut a little bit more of that kind of dead space, if you will, off on that right side. And I'm just going to cut through that canvas and get it ready to put right back in that frame. All right, so this frame originally came with the 2 holes on the sides that requires 2 nails and a level. So I really don't blame that somebody hung this little D-ring in the middle, but that's not even the direction that our frame is going to hang once we're finished. So I went ahead and took that little D-ring off before I put my artwork in here. All right, at first I thought I might just set the canvas on top of the board and then shove it down in the frame, but I got nervous that it would not, that it might have a bubble or it would shift when I went to put it on there. So I am going to glue it down, and then I am going to put this glue on here and then just use my finger to rub it in and just get it all over. And then I will set my canvas on there and press down with my hands, and I'm even going to use a brayer to ensure that it's adhered. I mean, honestly, I think if somebody wanted to take it off, they could peel it off out of there. I don't think that the picture in the background would still be usable, but if they just didn't like this print but they wanted to use the frame for something else, they could peel that off. Well, let's put it back together and you guys can tell me what you think. So let me know in the comments, are you feeling inspired to redo anything? Are you feeling overwhelmed? I know that for me, my stash had gotten out of control, so this has been really exciting to share with you guys as I continue to remake these. And some of them, again, were like as simple as adding artwork to a frame just so that I could get it in my booth to sell. And some of them, you know, whether I'm painting the frame or I'm completely changing the artwork in general, I'm feeling really excited about getting through this. Since we changed this to vertically, I have to add a new hanging system. It's not very heavy, so it's not going to require anything majorly big deal. So I'm just going to center a sawtooth hanger in here, and that helps to get it straight for whoever is going to own it in the future. All right, here I have this wonderful folding vintage gold frame. I absolutely love these. It has these, the backing looks like it's been covered with a contact paper. I don't know if it's just stuck in there backwards so it looks prettier on the front side, or if somebody actually did something with the frame where they wanted it to have that back. But we're going to add these. They're just, they're faux canvas. It's actually plastic. And I picked these up. I have these, and then there's some like vintage horses and dogs. But anyway, I got a pack of 12 of them for like $3. So it makes them affordable enough that I can cut them up and stick them in these frames. So I am going to use both the man and the woman, and I'm using the back of the frame to decide how big I need it. You will watch me evolve here shortly when I have enough sense to use the glass. so that I can see through. I mean, seriously, I don't know. I used that on the ones I did before, so I don't know. But anyway, apparently I was tired and was trying to figure it out using the cardboard. So I do, like I said, I figure out, use the glass. So I had to cut these in a way that made sense. So for example, I didn't want to cut it right down the middle of her hand and have just her fingers tipped on the side there. For the guy, he actually had a dog at the bottom, and I didn't want to just have like a dog's nose. So it does mean that I had to cut it with his hand completely missing. But I just measured what made the most sense so that I could cut them and get them in the frame. I cleaned the glass, I put the pictures in, and then we are completely finished with this one. It is ready to go in and sell this awesome vintage folding frame. So I bought this frame for the beautiful detail on it. I have another canvas that I have cut out of the frame, and I am going to fit its size into this one. I'm not really in the market for a picture of a bathtub. So I'm going to first start with prying that little sawtooth hanger out of there. It's the kind that you just hammer in. And I like those, but they don't always stick the best, but I really do love those. So sometimes I'll put a little bit dab of glue down in the holes before I hammer it in. Started to pick the price tag off, and then I realized the paper actually peeled off really easily. So I take that paper off of there. I save it because at first I think I'm going to reuse that and put it back on there. But this one unfortunately had like a million staples. So I used a screwdriver and began to pry up the staples and then get pliers and start to pull them all out. I was so nervous about breaking the glass. I mean, that's one of the things about when you're trying to pry in there is you don't want to break the glass. So you have to be careful. So you can see I'm having quite a battle here, rolling it back around and trying to get it. But yeah, so this was fun. Definitely not my favorite project, but I do love the way it turns out. So once I get it apart, I can finally get this piece of cardboard out of here. I pulled the mat off, and now I'm going to pop off the little 3D look where it has that secondary frame down inside there. I need to borrow the cardboard here, so I am just trying to gently break off this little frame. It is actually wood. I saved it just because I thought you never know. And because that's what crafters do. But I get it completely off, and then I'm going to use this piece of cardboard to adhere the little canvas that I'm going to replace it with. Once I have that all taken care of, I'm using my glass. I've cleaned it, so I'm using a paper towel to kind of hold it down to keep fingerprints off of it. And then I'm just using a marker to mark right there on the canvas so that I know where to cut. And again, I'm just trying to decide, because the canvas is bigger than the frame, I'm just trying to use the best part. I don't know why sheep just scream spring to me, but I really wanted to use a lot of sheep items in my booth. So I glued that down in the same manner that I did the other one and used a brayer to make sure that it was good and adhered. But I just did not like the gold with that color. So I've decided that I am going to actually paint with the Debi's Design Diary, the new colors that just came out. And I have Electrified and Eden. Thank you. Thank you, Self, for holding that up so I could remember what color it was. So these are brand new, but I am excited about taking these paints. I'm going to mix them together. One of the most awesome things about Debi's Design Diary DIY paint is they blend wonderfully together. I absolutely love how you can make new colors. So I'm just going to take a little bit of each of these colors, and then I do want it to be just a little bit darker, and so I add in a hint of the Fusion Coal Black. And I don't care, when I'm mixing it together, I really don't care if I get all three colors completely blended. It doesn't hurt my feelings if you can kind of see a hint of one of them separately. So when I start blending them in, I'm actually making more of a glaze, if you will, because I'm going to paint it on there and wipe it back, trying to keep from getting my bright green in my Eden, getting my Electrified in my Eden. So I was looking for a different paintbrush there that I could use, and I'm just kind of pulling it off the lid so you can see I'm barely using any of this paint. So after I get it all stirred in there, then I'm going to come back, and the reason I keep saying I'm making a glaze is because I am treating it the same way I did the waxes. And my goal is to get it down in all of that detail and then wipe back the excess. I thought that kind of greenish gold would look really good with the colors in that sheet picture, but it's almost like they're the same color. It needed something to make the frame stand out, and it kind of picks up the greens in that picture. So I'm going to put it on there while it's still wet, and I had to move kind of quickly because that clay-based paint dries very fast. And I'm just wiping it off of the frame and keeping it down in all those low spots. So here it is after it's been wiped back and it's dried. And you can see I painted a little frame there in the top right because I didn't want to waste the paint. I went ahead and took advantage. So I am using some finishing nails here, and they're a little bit longer than what I needed, but I was able to get them in there. I'm trying, again, I'm really nervous about breaking the glass, but I just need to hold it down tightly for a minute so I can actually use hot glue. So I am going to use hot glue to hold it, but I just needed those nails to hold it down in there real tight. Remember the piece of paper that was on here in the back? Well, I did use it as a template, but it had a Goodwill sticker on it, and then it had where Goodwill writes with Sharpie on the back of their things. So I decided I really wanted to just use a fresh piece of paper, and I'm going to use my 3-in-1. The thing, again, I love about this is it dries really fast. It's not goopy or gumpy, kind of like hot glue would be. So I am going to just do kind of a strip. It's kind of like when you decoupage and you create a starter strip. I'm not going to try to put my whole piece of paper down at one time. I'm just going to start here at the end, mostly because it keeps rolling up, and I feel like if I were to try to do the whole thing at once, it might roll, and then I would end up with glue on it in places that I didn't want, and it would not stay nice and fresh. It would end up all messy. But also, you can see I added a piece of cardboard. Sorry, I forgot about that. I added a piece of cardboard down in there because where it had kind of a 3D look, it sunk down in there. And when I put this paper on the back, I wanted it to go nice and flat. So I did cut a piece of cardboard to go down in there. And it's on top of where I had nailed that other piece down in and then used hot glue. And then I used hot glue there. I'm just looking for a dry, clean rag so that I can press this down in here. But I do then kind of go a little bit at a time on the top and the bottom until I have that paper completely covering the back. So even though this was going to hang horizontally instead of vertically, it's really lightweight, and I think that hammer-in sawtooth hanger that was in it before is actually still going to be sufficient for what this is. So again, I hammer it in, and then I just add a tiny little bit of super glue right around the edges just to make sure that it doesn't pull out. So here is the final view of all of the items from the frame group 2. Let me know which one was your favorite here.
I'll come around, promise I'll come around, love. I'll come around, I'll come around, promise I'll come around, love. Sooner than later, I'll come around.
We're at our third and final group of frames. So I have this little silver frame. We are going to pair it with some Jami Ray Vintage rice paper. I paid $1.99 for this frame. I think it is just a wonderful, sweet frame. But if we use the paper, the picture that I want is bigger than the area that I have. So if I were to use it that way, I would actually have some of the surrounding images. So what we're going to do, I have cut it out, and now I just have a clean paintbrush with a little bowl of water, and I am going to go along the edge, just right at the edge of where that white is, because I want to get rid of all of that white, but I don't want it to be cut. I don't want it to look like it's cut. I want it to be aged and frayed. So I'm just taking my paintbrush, I'm going around the edge, and then I am going to tear it all the way around that picture. So to fill in the gap of the frame, I actually had some plain white rice paper, so no picture, but the same texture as the picture with the little girl with the pig. So I am going to use my glue here and just put a very thin, light layer so that she doesn't slide around once she's in the frame. I want her to stay on the white paper, and so I'm just gently using my finger to kind of spread that glue over where she's going to be. And then I will stick her on there, and then we will put the frame back together. I've cleaned the glass and wiped the frame down, so it's all ready for her to go in there. Guys, I think this is my favorite one of all of the frames from this video. I picked this frame up at one of the booths at the vendor mall where I have my booth, and I would say that somebody had redone it for maybe their own coffee bar. And these little decals, they're probably maybe from the dollar store. They're the kind that just peel right off. They don't leave any kind of residue on the glass or anything. And so it was really cute, but I wanted that size frame with that texture, and this one was just so perfect. Once I got that all off and got the glass ready to clean, I popped this out. It just had those little tabs that you had to fold back. This actually had a Hobby Lobby sticker on the back of it, so I don't know what used to be in here because this burlap was not original. I did go ahead and save it and put it in my stash. It was a nice piece of burlap. I'm going to be using this canvas print here, and it doesn't fit, and I felt really bad about cutting his horn off, except that one side was already cut off, so that worked out well. He or she, I guess it could be a she. I love the Highland cows. I know they're still really popular everywhere, but I need to cut it to fit inside the frame. And this frame had been spray painted white. You can just tell when things are spray painted, but that meant that it had a sealer, it was kind of the same as if I had put a clear sealer on a painted frame. So I am using my Fusion Furniture Wax in the color Espresso, just using a chip brush here and really working it down inside all of that texture, because where it's painted white, it just disappears. You can't see how beautiful the design on the frame is. Once I have it completely covered, then I came back with a dry towel, and this is actually, it's a lint-free rag. It's an old flour sack towel that had just been used until it was falling apart, so I cut it into pieces to use for things just like this. But when you wipe off all of the wax on the high places and it sticks down in there, I just think that this one is so pretty, and it matched the design on that Highland cow print perfectly. I wish I had a place to put this, because I totally would keep it. From here, it's as simple as putting it back together. So I've cleaned the glass and using a paper towel just to make sure that I don't get any fingerprints on it. And of course, it has those little tabs on the frame, so I have to make sure I get it down inside those tabs. You can take them out and insert them, but if I can get everything out without having to pull them out, then I usually do it that way. But again, I'm just going to put my perfectly cut picture in there. I'm going to stick this back in, fold all those little tabs down. That hanging system on the back is still perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. It does have an opportunity to hang it horizontally or vertically in the original, which makes me really wonder what was in there. But it's perfect the way it is. So I am just going to fold all those little things back. I'm going to fold them down with that screwdriver because I'm trying to make them as tight as possible so that I can be sure that my canvas doesn't move. I haven't glued it to the back or anything. That way if somebody doesn't like it and they want the frame, they have the option to take it out and do something different. This is that little frame that I used my leftover green paint, and I am using another Sierra Club flower greeting card, and I did have to cut this one down so it won't be able to be reused as a card. This frame doesn't have any glass, but I think it'll still be fine just having this print in there. I think it's so cute. I'm just trying to figure out the right size, and again, because this did not have any glass or any backing, then I am cutting a piece of cardboard to stick in there. So I'm just trying to measure, and this is just, I literally cut this from a cardboard box. So I have my card the right size, and I have my cardboard the right size. So I'm just going to use my hot glue gun and fasten it in there really well. I'm going to go all the way around, and then to finish it off, I'm going to go ahead and add some brown paper so that it looks like a finished piece of art. I think I actually got this frame in the Goodwill bins. I don't remember, but that's what I was thinking, is that it was the Goodwill bins. So here I'm just cutting my brown paper. This was just a scrap piece I had from what I did earlier. I will cut it out and I will glue it on the back the same way I have done the others. Remember the tiny little brass D-ring that was on that barn frame? The Barnwood frame? Well, it was just absolutely the perfect size for this tiny little frame, and so now it has hanging hardware too. This is a very lightweight, simple wood frame. So I am going to give it a new life and create my own art with IOD transfers. But first, we're going to use Debi's Design Diary Electrified. I'm an August baby. My birthstone is that light green peridot, and I love all things kind of a lime green. And the transfers that I'm going to use, the leaves kind of have that same green color in a couple of them, so I'm really excited to be able to create my own art here. I'm going to give this 2 coats, and then I'm going to come back and distress it. I'm just distressing it with a wet wipe. I want to bring back a little bit of that gold, and Debi's Design Diary paint distresses really well with just water, so you don't have to use sandpaper. But I'm going to use clear wax here because I do need to seal it, and I don't want to change the color. I love the color exactly the way it is. So I am using clear wax. I'm using, this is honestly just a paper napkin from my kitchen table. And I started doing this and just wiping it on there because I didn't want to get another brush dirty. Well, then I realized that I was going to get green in my wax. So I folded that over and then got a giant chunk of wax and just kind of left wads of it places, and then went back and picked it up and started making sure to wax everything. So there you go, lazy man's way. Here are the 3 pieces of the transfer I'm going to use, and this is kind of a tea-stained apparent looking just piece of cardstock. So it's kind of an antique aged piece of cardstock. Using my glass, of course, cutting my frame so I know exactly how much room I have to work with. And I'm going to practice laying my transfers out to get the design that I'm really going for. And you can see there on the right of those leaves, so the leaves on the right, it has 2 of them that really match that green perfectly. So I'm trying to figure out how to get it up high enough that you can still see that. And the thing that's really awesome about the IOD transfers, you don't have to use them the same way they're laid out in the books that you get them. You can cut them and just use pieces of them. You can layer them, but just think when you layer them, kind of get your image in mind so you know which one you want to put down first. So here I am beginning the process. All IOD transfers come with a plastic stick that's an applicator stick. And I do not have one sitting here, so I am honestly using my hands to push on that and kind of get it to stick a little bit. I'm going to cut off that excess so that it doesn't stick to the paper that I have down on the counter as my my placemat. So I'm kind of thinking, where do I want to use that? I'm going to wait, and then I'm pressing it down with these scissors, and then I will use my fingers to do it. If you've never used a transfer, they are absolutely amazing. It gives a way to produce what looks like hand-painted art. And if you start to peel it up and it hasn't stuck, just push it back down and press down again, and then use your plastic sheet to burnish it, making sure that it is adhered everywhere that it touches the paper. So I'm going to do exactly the same thing with my bunny, and then I will add my mushroom. I will actually add in that piece that I cut off the top first, so that I don't waste any of it. That's the thing, is that you can do so many things. They're very versatile, and there's so many of them. I will put in the description the name of all of the supplies that I've used for everything today. So if you've seen something that you like and you might want to purchase, then I will make sure to put the title of it. If there's something I miss, or you don't know what it is or understand how to use it, then please just make a note in the comment and I will definitely get back to you. And there we go, an absolutely beautiful vintage looking piece of art. So we're going to put our clean glass back in there, then we're going to add our paper in there and close it up, and it is ready to go. I love it. This is another really easy one. I did not want to do anything to this frame. It is actually a document frame. I did pick it up at the vendor mall where I have my booth, but I am using another Jami Ray Vintage rice paper. It has kind of a hint of that same green, and it just looks so springy to me. I'm excited to add some spring into my booth. But I'm kind of sanding off a little bit of that like mahogany cherry dark wood look, and I just wanted to kind of lighten it up a little bit, but I really wanted to save that wood with that vintage looking gold. I think actually it's just kind of faded, but I think it makes it look old. And so I just cut the paper down to size, put the back in it, and that is really honestly all I did here with this one. But it's a great way to display this paper, and it also has the option to hang on the wall. We are definitely in the home stretch. This is the very last makeover that I'm going to show you. I picked up this giant frame for $4.99 at Goodwill. It's so big I can't actually get it all in the frame here. It has kind of an inset frame and this piece of cardboard on top. It had some foam underneath there keeping it raised up, but I am not going to use that. I'll save it, and if I need to use it somewhere else, I can. But this is the second time I have used this sheep canvas in a video, so if you already subscribe and follow me, you may have seen this before, but it just fits perfectly in there. So apparently I wasn't recording, but let me show you what I've done here. So when I was taking the back off, I realized that there were screws that held that inner frame in there. So I went ahead and took that off, but it ripped a little bit because this is actually just a piece of foam board covered with some kind of shiny paper that gave it that look. So it was almost like a gold leaf type look. So since I knew I was going to paint the frame anyway, I used the Fusion transition high hiding coverage mineral paint. And then I just used my chip brush to pounce it around in there to kind of mimic the look of the canvas. So, and then the rest I just gave a paint. It'll take 2 coats, obviously. I'm not as worried about the inside here because that's where our canvas is going to be. And then we'll go ahead and lay our inset frame, which I will also paint white, and then do 2 coats of the primer, and then I will add the color. So I'll come back after this has dried, I've added a 2nd coat, and I'm getting ready to add the primer to it. So anyway, here we go. Sorry that I didn't record, but I'll be back. Now that it has 2 coats of that fusion paint, it says it's not really a primer, but hiding coverage to me kind of means a primer. But anyway, I am actually using mud paint in the color lilac, and it's really hard to tell the difference here of that color paint and the white. It looks a little bit pink, but with the dark wax over it, it looks beautiful with that canvas. And then I'm going to paint my entire frame. I've gone around the insert there, and then I'm going to paint the whole frame with the Jami Ray Vintage Cottage color Crockery. And I'm not going to tell a lie here. I accidentally let this freeze. Don't do that. I lucked out here. I was able to stir it and use it, but it is really chunky, and I was really nervous about what it would be like. Okay, so this canvas has this like crackle look where it's supposed to try to look like it's old and aged. And look what our lilac mud paint did. See that crackle? So I am really excited about how this turned out. I think once we've waxed everything, it'll help make that really pop. It'll help make that look more like the colors in here. But what we are going to do first is we're going to actually glue this onto this insert frame so that we can get it on there before we wax everything, and then we'll be finished. So you can see this is how this one came out. I love that it just looks like it's this old frame. And let's go ahead and get started adding that back on there. I'm going to set the camera down. I am going to just tack it with some hot glue on all 4 corners, and then I'm going to actually go around and glue it the rest of the way. But this way I can make sure before I start doing a whole strip down there that I've actually got it straight. Alright, now that I've got it attached and it is centered and the screws on the bottom, I am now using Debi's Design Diary Dark Wax to get in that groove and really pick up that crackle from our mud paint, and then also to darken and age that crockery. And I really want to get into the beautiful texture and detail around this frame. It was so hard to see it at a distance, so I wanted to really give you a close-up. I absolutely love the way this is turning out. It's exactly the look I was going for. The original wire was so stretched out that I actually was able to use the same wire without even shortening it because it stretched all the way across here. So I measured down around 5 inches from the top and then marked where that is, used my needle nose pliers to hold the tiny screw, and I put a total of 4 screws in the 2 D-rings with the wire between them. And here is the 3rd set all finished.
When it's light, I'll bury my fright, and I'll walk slow, my head down and low. We'll swallow the ocean, then you halt all the motion. Woke up out at sea and spoke up, please believe you'll swallow the ocean.
Here's some that were actually done off camera using Golden Ticket and Golden Rule by Debi's Design Diary, and then also Dixie Bell Silver Gilding Wax. The horse print was actually a Christmas gift from one of my husband's awesome clients. That one is not for sale, but I was excited to get it hung on my own wall.